Taitano, right? Hi, everybody. For this episode, we're joined by Samantha Taitano from Guam in the United States. Samantha is the executive director of Menyetlu, a nonprofit organization that empowers and educates youth and families to make changes that better their lives. Samantha, I'm glad you're joining us on the podcast. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me this morning for me and late afternoon for you, Paul. So thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I'm glad you're here, and we're joining each other from such a long ways away, but it seems like the technology solves all those problems, and you and I are just, having a nice conversation looking at each other on our computer screens. People that know you best describe you as hardworking, passionate, busy, and someone who knows how to get things done. Where did those personality traits come from?
So I definitely think those personality traits come from my dad. As you get older and you kind of see the way that you're kind of living life, and then you like reflect on how your parents are living, I definitely have this kind of itch in my body, similar to my dad. He's always kind of moving around, doing things. He is 73. He's going to be 74 this year, and he's always doing like yard work. He despite what we try to tell him to stop doing, like he's always like lifting heavy things. He can't stay still. And I definitely think I get that. And, with like the yard work or just kind of anything that he does in life, he's always working hard. And so he's kind of really instilled that into me.
So your dad's a hard worker around the house now. Was he like that in his professional life too? What did your dad do?
Yes. So he was in the Army. He retired as a command sergeant major. So he had a long career of kind of working hard in the Army. So.
Got it. So he learned some of those skills in the military, some of that stick-to-itness and that regimen about being persistent. Do you think he directly tried to teach that stuff to you, or did that just by osmosis rub off on you?
I'd say it's a little bit of both, a little bit of osmosis, a little bit of kind of teaching us through, the things that he says. Like even now, my sister was here during the holidays, and so we all kind of stayed together in the family house, and he'd always tease everybody in the morning, like, is like everyone going to get up yet? Or, kind of like, are you guys going to start working yet? Or, it's a little bit of like us watching him and kind of learning from him, but then also some of just like the things that he said while we're growing up about, working hard and the value of working hard.
Yeah. Well, certainly you seems to rub off, because a little bit about I know about you. You're definitely a hardworking person. And what was your mom like? Was she the same way?
Yes, she is. So she's not necessarily the outside getting things done, but she's the inside getting things done. And then also, growing up, my mom was a very hard worker. She was also in the Army. When she had me, she had kind of switched over to the reserves, or I think it's when she had my sister, she switched over to the reserves. But even through that, once my sister and I were in school, she was back at work. And then sometimes during the tax season, she would also be a tax preparer. So both of my parents worked very hard to be able to provide for us, and then also to kind of instill, those values of, working hard to make ends meet, and also generosity. So my parents were also very generous people as well.
You have 5 siblings. Did any of them follow in your parents' footsteps and join the military as well?
No, none of them did, actually. My youngest sister is a doctor now. Well, she has her PhD in immunology. And then, my other siblings, one it kind of worked with the military, but nobody knows what he did because he can't tell us. But he wasn't like in the military. And then, my older sister, she worked with like a pharmaceutical company for a really long time, and then my older brother, he does real estate and then also works for UPS. So just like a bunch of different things going on.
Yeah. So your parents are in Guam. Did they grow up in Guam, or did the military bring them there?
So my dad is originally from here, but my mom, she was a military brat herself. So she was born in California, but she spent most of her childhood growing up in Okinawa. But they did meet because of the military. But when it became time for my dad to retire, he wanted to retire back here on Guam to be around family.
Got it. So you have five siblings. How are you like them? What would you say some of the characteristics of your family are? What are some of the common traits that you all carry?
I think not even it extends past my siblings into like my aunts and uncles and my cousins. I think that we all have a really good sense of, I don't know if I'd say a good sense of humor, but we all think we all have a good sense of humor. We all, but it's a shared sense of humor. It's a little bit obnoxious. It's really kind of based on like teasing each other. It's all in good fun though. So I think that, our family is all like pretty funny, like to tease each other. I'd say that we're relatively modest. We kind of keep to the family, and we don't live necessarily extravagant lifestyles or anything. So
Yeah. And you also described your parents as being very generous. Can you talk a little bit about how that generosity shows through and what you were exposed to when you were younger and how that generosity played out?
sure. So there's the in my house we have this like little news article about my dad and his friends, and so I had actually given like a little talk about philanthropy and giving back to the community. And it kind of made me reflect, back on where did that all kind of stem from. And, first off, growing up, we were in competitive swimming, and with that swim club, giving back to the community was a big thing. So we did a lot of volunteer things, from like ringing the Salvation Army bell to going to one of the elderly homes and doing like Christmas carols, things like that. But I also thought about, my parents and kind of seeing the way that they've given back. And so my dad and a couple of his friends, they're all veterans. They're all hardworking, actually. They all kind of came together to help one of the disabled veterans that they knew build a new house. So the gentleman paid for all of the materials, and my dad and his friends, who were retired at the time, all these old dudes, helped to build this guy's family house. And so, just kind of those things, and just sort of like the small things. My parents have always been, when they're able to, willing to kind of give back. They're one of like the number one supporters of the organization I'm with. Like we have a Christmas event, and I have pictures of my parents dressed up as elves for the Christmas event to do like little activities with kids. So, just sort of their willingness to kind of give back in a bunch of different kinds of ways.
Well, they sound like wonderful people, and it sounds like you had a wonderful upbringing and very supportive, loving parents. And kudos to you. That sounds like a great experience. So you carry a lot of their characteristics with you. Is there something in particular that you've kind of branched off that's just uniquely Samantha that you kind of carry different from your siblings or your parents? Can you think of anything like that?
So for me, I would say the thing that's a little bit different about me is that I'm a lot more free-spirited.
Mm.
So I went to art school, so it was just like kind of like my path was always sort of like, oh, that's Samantha. She's just going to do, what she wants to do. So it's like I went to art school, and then after art school, I joined the Peace Corps, and they're just like watching me, like, okay, like I guess like do what you're gonna do. So a lot more free spirited, I would say.
Yeah. Did you at one time think you were going to be an artist when you went to art school? Was that something you had a plan for?
Yes, definitely. I mean, so I majored in film, and my emphasis was in film editing. After college, I worked in a film post lab before joining the Peace Corps. And then, even after the Peace Corps, when I came back to Guam, which was supposed to be just like a 6 month stint, but then I'm still here. um, the first job that I got was actually in sort of like a marketing and brand development position. So I was able to use a lot of my art skills in that first job, and then sort of, with small businesses, you start doing a bunch of other things. With Minyetlu, I also kind of led the disaffiliation from Big Brothers Big Sisters of Guam to Minyetlu. And with that, that meant that I got to do a lot of the initial art. So a lot of like the marketing material, a lot of like the first social media stuff. I got to be a part of. And then just as we got busier and busier, I don't do as much of it anymore. Every once in a while, I'll tinker around and create like a little video or a post. But yeah, I mean, I still try to weave art into everything I do. I wrote a grant that was specifically to bring art workshops to underserved communities because I love art and I
Yeah.
wanted, I just thought it would be a great thing to expose the kids to.
Yeah. You've done so many different things as I've gotten to know you. You're a yoga instructor and a certified coach, and you even are taking carpentry now. Is that right?
Yes, yes. So I'm actually in carpentry level 4. So I've been going to a trade school here for, oh my gosh, maybe 5 or 6 years because I've dabbled in a lot of different trades, but carpentry was really what kind of I wanted to start off with. I'm like I told you, I kind of have this itch where I always have to be doing something, and so tinkering around with things is something that I've always enjoyed. And I've always wanted to be able to like build my own furniture or just like to do even like the basic home things around the house. And so through my carpentry classes, I've been able to learn how to build the different furniture. I mean, the carpentry is such a wide skill that it goes everything from rough carpentry to finishing. So, I could also build a house if I really wanted to.
Oh,
But, and like you kind of said, I have a lot of different things going on, but I think it's because I always enjoy learning. And so I always want to learn something new. And, I'm also a yes person. So, it's like when there's an opportunity there, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, like why not? Unless I really can't create time or create space for it, I'll usually be on board because as long as it's a positive thing, like what's the worst that could happen?
it's amazing what you take on, and I believe you probably will build your own house someday. So I'd love to see it when you're done with it. But do you ever just actually take on too much? You described yourself as a yes person. Do you ever find yourself just overwhelmed or feeling like you've taken on too many things?
A little bit. So yes, one of the things that I am working on is boundaries. Being able to say no. I feel like I say yes because I really genuinely want to do things. But the more recently, over the past couple years, it's really just been like, okay, you want to do this, but realistically, can you do this? And so I'm actually very good about managing my time. I calendar everything, which maybe doesn't seem as free spirited, but I calendar everything so that I can do all of the things my free spirit wants to do, but it's still managed. But yeah, so sometimes I can feel overwhelmed with the amount of things that I need to do. But I've also sort of, adopted the mindset where it's like, okay, like this can wait until tomorrow. Like, especially when it comes to work. I definitely create a lot of time for self-care. And so a lot of the extra activities that I do outside of work, I kind of look at as being self-care. But, I also kind of look at my work as I need to ensure that I have balance and that I'm not spending like 12 hours a day at the office, which sometimes it happens. And, sometimes there's just things that need to get done. And I'm always more than willing to do them. But I also look at it where it's like, okay, there's no deadline necessarily around this, or the deadline is a little bit further out. Like the work will still be here tomorrow. Like I still need to have like a life outside of work in order to still come to work and be happy and be as productive as possible.
You've accomplished so much, and I can't hardly imagine what you're going to accomplish down the road. And so thank you for sharing a little bit of your background, letting us know how you got to be where you're at today and some of the lessons you've taken and the traits you've received from your parents. That's a wonderful background. We do have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'd like to learn more about your specific role in youth work and what you think about all that. So we'll be right back after this short break. And we're back with Samantha from Guam. And right before the break, I was talking about I'd like to get into a little bit more about your specifics with working with young people. So what positioned you best to all of a sudden take on an executive director role at a mentoring program when that isn't something you really had done much of?
I know it kind of seems like a crazy sort of transition into. So I guess to take it back a little bit, when I first started working with kids, it was actually in high school. So I grew up swimming, and then in high school, I eventually started teaching swimming. And then, after high school, I was in college. I didn't do too much youth work while in college, but after college, I joined the Peace Corps. And when I was in the Peace Corps, I was a community development volunteer. So I was based in a school. I had started a youth organization while I was in South Africa for out of school youth and in school youth. And then it was really to help them figure out what their next steps were going to be. And so I feel like when I reflect back on the work that I did in South Africa, it kind of really truly led me into what I'm doing right now. When I came back to Guam, like I mentioned, it was supposed to just be a short stint here, attend a couple weddings, hang out with my family because I'd been gone for 2.5 years. And I eventually got the marketing job. Once I sort of got settled into that, I guess that kind of desire to want to make an impact in the community came back up. And so I had done some volunteer work with Habitat for Humanity, ties back into the carpentry stuff. But here actually our buildings, because we have a lot of typhoons and earthquakes, are all concrete. So the only thing you can really do volunteer-wise with Habitat for Humanity here is to help with fundraisers. And although I did assist with that and it was really great, I wanted to do a little bit more, something more hands-on. And so that's when I found Big Brothers Big Sisters of Guam. And so I was like, oh, great, like a mentoring program. And when I first thought about it, I was like, oh, like I'm gonna hang out with a kid. Like, what if the kid doesn't like me? You just have those like reservations of like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like a mentor. But I was kind of like, no, the kid's gonna like me. Like, my little's gonna like me. And so I was matched with a little, and we still have a good relationship. She's relocated off island, but we still kind of message each other, the great things about technology. But then while I was a mentor, I kind of just saw like the job announcement for the executive director position, and I had known someone who was working here, and they were like, oh yeah, like there's an announcement, like if you guys know anybody who's interested. And I was like, why not? Like, the most they can do is say no. And I was like, and so, then it's like that process of like putting your resume together. And like I was, and then when you're doing that, putting your resume together, it was just like kind of building my confidence. I was like, no, like I can do this. Like I can do this. This is, yeah, there's like little things that I've been doing throughout my life that can like lead me to be a great leader at an organization. And so I applied, they interviewed me, and then I guess I like to think I interview very, very well. So
You must have,
now I'm
yes.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
now I'm here. I started in 2018. And so it's been a great, great journey.
Sounds like it has been. I know you've done some really good things there to make sure that more young people are getting access to services there. And I'd like to talk about that in a little bit. But do you feel like you're getting that gratification from giving back more, to being generous, to versus just being like you were in marketing? So are you getting that kind of altruistic kind of satisfaction out of your work now?
Definitely. I mean, I don't get to directly work with youth as often as I did before. I mean, when I first started with the organization, I would kind of go out to the community sites and everything. Usually try to go out once a week, but sort of with the amount of work that I've created for myself, I don't get to do it as often, but I do get to kind of share like the successes that those that are on the ground get to share. You know, I have weekly meetings with all of our teams to kind of share a little bit about what what the projects have been doing. And so, even though I'm not out there every week spending time with the kids, just knowing the impact and being able to support the team that we have here in the work that they do, it feels good. It feels good to help people.
Yeah, it's meaningful work. What you're doing is impacting young people all over Guam, and the impact that your teammates are having with them is changing your community and making the world a little better place. So kudos to you for moving into that direction and doing some meaningful work. Somebody with your skills and your dedication is definitely needed in this field to help advance, and make it move forward. Of all your things you do as an executive director, is there one thing you like more than others?
It kind of goes back to the fact that I don't get to do it as often, but I love going out to the different community sites that we have, the outreaches, the events. Those are some of my favorite things to do. And then also, I do enjoy talking about our programs. I do a lot of interviews, so I do really enjoy talking about our programs because it also just like makes you remember all of the amazing things that our organization is doing and that the team is doing. And when I reflect back on sort of what the year has been and all of the activities we've done, we're always amazed because we're like, how did we cram all of that into that amount of time? Mm-hmm. And, it is never a dull moment here. It is always just boots on the ground, going from here to there, preparing for the next activity, conducting the next activity. So everything here is a lot of fun.
And you have so many skills and different interests and things that you could probably be very good at, but yet somehow you ended up working with young people. Can you describe, or do you know where your passion for helping young people came from and how it evolved into doing what you're doing right now?
So I definitely think that my passion for working with young people stems from the time that I spent in South Africa, specifically working with young people. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the most amount of time that I was on the ground just doing really grassroots work. I was going into a foreign country where, we spent a couple months learning the language, but, you don't necessarily understand, and you're like trying to build a connection with the community. And so some of the things that I remember is just, sitting underneath of this like jacaranda tree, which is this has beautiful purple flowers, and just kind of like staying there. Like, I think it was like every Wednesday after school, being like, hey, like we're gonna, I'm inviting all of the youth to like meet up and like start talking, right? And so, the first couple of times, like some of the little kids are like looking over, being like, what's she doing? And then, eventually we got such a good group of people coming out regularly, um, that and they were really like the driving force around what the organization started doing. They kind of had ideas about what their community needs, what the youth in their community needs, and I was just kind of there to be like, okay, like, well, let's do it then, and sort of help find ways to make those things happen. And so it's just very inspiring because young people are very knowledgeable, and they're very aware. They're very aware of what's going around them, and they still have this like very um, great outlook on life, no matter what their situation is. I was working in a village that had dirt roads, and the kids hand washed their uniforms every day because, maybe they only had one or two uniforms. But that didn't change like the energy or the outlook on life. There's still so much hope. And so being able to support a young person and to continue to, work towards like their dreams or to provide different ideas about what their future can be, it makes a huge impact. And actually I still message one of the little girls who was like in fifth
Wow,
grade.
great.
Yeah, in South Africa. And actually the last thing she was messaging me about was like relationship advice. And I was like, wow, things have changed. But
Right.
like it's like, like we've built this connection, and to still be able to, thank you technology, thank you social media, but to still be able to connect with people, watch them develop and grow, and to continue to be a mentor towards this young person. It's a wonderful feeling. It's watching the kids develop and grow and blossom is just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's amazing the power of relationships, and it's so cool that she still stays in contact with you. I know since you've taken over as the executive director of Minyetlu that you have grown the number of your team pretty substantially so that more young people can access the services you have. Can you talk about some of the growth you've had there and how you've gone about achieving that?
Yeah, so I started here in 2018, and we had a team of less than 10 people, and we were operating probably on about 3 grants.
Mm-hmm.
And today, in 2022, we have a team of about 26 people.
Nice.
We're actually looking to onboard additional staff in the coming month. And really, that's been through a lot of grant writing. So I do majority of the grant writing here, although I am trying to develop leaders and writers in our organization. So I kind of bring those who are interested, and then also those who are kind of in leadership positions within the organization into the grant writing process. Just trying to mentor them, so that if they ever do become interested, or if I decide to do something else, that there will be people who have at least a good idea about what they want to do. And so one of the first things I also did, and this was something that the board wanted to do, was we disaffiliated from Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, and localized our program to Minyetlu. And that was really to just kind of ensure that we were customizing our program to make the most change in our community, but then also to recognize that we had grown beyond a one-to-one mentoring program. We also do a lot of family support services. So through the mentoring, those before me also kind of saw that, although we have these mentors for young people, we also need to support the families, so that when they go back home, they're going back home to a good foundation as well. So we have grants that allow us to provide activities in some of the low to moderate income housing areas here on the island. We have drug prevention, alcohol, tobacco, and drug prevention programs in elementary schools. We have family support services. And we do have a bunch of projects that are specific to migrants coming from the freely associated states. So helping those families, as they kind of land here on Guam, get into the swing of things here.
It's an impressive growth spurt, and the expansion of services is really something remarkable. So you understand all the technical stuff of it. You work with the budgets, you write the grants, all that kind of stuff. But do you ever just slow down and think about the impact that you're having on your community?
I do. So, I mean, it still kind of is a little bit of the technical stuff, but we just had one of our grant reports due, one of our quarterly reports due. And so, as I was preparing the report, I was just like, wow, like looking back on the different things that we do. So, whenever it comes to reporting time, of course, it can be a bit like, oh, reports, but it also just gives us that opportunity to be like, wow, like, look at what we have done. Look at the impact that we've been able to make. You don't necessarily look at the numbers every single day and say, oh, like we've assisted this many people, or, these are how our demographics are changing. This is, we are moving towards being a very data-driven organization. So, we capture a lot of data and we analyze it, and we to make sure that any workshop or program we're doing is really making change. And so it's a great way to be like, oh, okay, so like these are the ways that we're impacting the community, and it's just really nice. And then another one of my favorite things about being in this position is that every once in a while I'll have somebody like come up to me, especially like when I have like official documents or something. So like I'll go to like Rev and Tax to file something, and they'll be like, oh, like I know this program, like, like my niece was part of it, and, it made a big difference, and so just even hearing those stories,
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what your future holds in store for you. I think you're going to branch out and do so many things in your lifetime, but I sure hope that you keep some sort of focus on helping our young people, because I do know that you have what it takes to make a big difference and really have a strong impact on these young people, their families, and your communities. So thank you for doing all the work you do, and thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I do like talking about what we do. And so even that, like, it gives you all of the feels of like, oh, like the team's doing so great.
Yep, they are. And we end every episode by asking our guest, what words of inspiration or wisdom would you like to leave with our listeners?
Sort of tagging into, what we were just last talking about is just, slow down, make time for things, reflect back on what you're doing. Like I said earlier, the work is always going to be there. And so, make sure you're taking care of yourself in order to be 100% when you're out there working with kids, working with families. It really starts with you. And, always, kind of remember that you need to take care of yourself, and that you taking care of yourself is showing the kids, your families, that, it's instilling really great things for them as well.